Hi, I'm Ben Leonberg. I'm the director of Good Boy, and I'm really excited to be showing my film at Fantasy Film Fest.
Could you just explain a little bit how you started with the story, where the inspiration came from?
Sure, yeah. So the idea for Good Boy really came from the most, concrete moment I can remember is watching Poltergeist for probably the millionth time. And if you remember, that film begins with the golden retriever wandering around the house, clearly keyed into that there's something paranormal going on before the family does. And I thought somebody should make a movie entirely from that dog's perspective. And then over the course of years, I figured out what would that movie actually look like? How would you actually tell a story from truly a dog's point of view without just, strapping a GoPro to a dog and, having it feel like he was a real character? And how would you advance the plot? And there's a lot of challenges there, but that's certainly where it started was with watching Poltergeist and trying to figure out how to go from there.
I was wondering, normally people say that the most difficult productions are when you include children and animals. You still chose the last one for your debut.
I definitely was warned. I think look, everything that was hard about working with Indy, and there was a lot of challenge. Indy is the name of the dog, both in reality and in the film. Everything that was hard about working with him is also what makes his performance really good, and I think what makes the movie unique. So that saying is absolutely true. Don't work with children and animals unless you're going to really, really make a meal out of it. In which case, maybe consider it.
How did you make it happen with him?
Yeah, so when I started writing the film, I didn't think I'd be making Good Boy with my own dog. That's what I did end up doing. I started writing the script while I was also shooting these little proof of concepts, like short films starring my own dog, because he was available. And in the beginning, some of them were just, like shot for shot remakes of scenes from The Shining. Sometimes they were based on original concepts, but there was so much practical learning of like how do you do shot reverse shot for a actor who can't necessarily hit exact marks, who can't telling them to look a certain way is a little bit challenging just to even control their gaze. So while I was learning to do that, I was writing the feature script with my co-writer. And one of our short films, we submitted to an online contest and it won. And Indy was recognized for his acting, and people were really responding to him very strongly. So that kind of forced our hand. And one of the big lessons we learned from both writing the film and then making those shorts was that doing this was going to take a incredibly long, it would be a very long shoot window, much longer than you would ever make a traditional fiction film. So then we just started chipping away at it over the course of years.
How concretely were you able to train him to do what he does?
Yeah. So I mean, so much of what you see in the movie isn't really Indy doing a trick. Like I'm not giving him a command, and he's like, I don't say a command, and he just does what you see in the scene. Frequently, we're setting up a situation where if the cameras are rolling, we'll get a shot of him doing something, which then, when edited into the montage of the film, will make sense. But by way of example, in reality, every morning when I get up and get out of bed, Indy weaves in between my legs and gets pats and scratches, and it's a cute little way he starts the day with me. We put that in the movie as something he does with the character, and I play the character's body. A real actor gives the vocal performance, but it's my legs and arms interacting with my dog. So the camera is set up. We were filming in the house we actually lived in. So my wife, who is a producer on the film, is a great sport for living in a haunted house for 3 years while we made the movie. Um, but so much of the film wasn't necessarily training him a specific do this thing to act for this shot. It was setting up a set of circumstances or providing him a unique stimuli that would elicit a response that looks like a performance when taken, in concert with everything else.
So that means also, because one question was if you use the original or the end sound design and score while you shot him, and so that means no, right? So you developed the soundtrack and the sound design afterwards or parallelly.
Absolutely, yeah. No, so we had a sound team involved in the film very early on. One of our co-producers, Brian Goodhart, who headed up the entire sound effort, he was involved more or less from day one, not necessarily on set, but just he was aware of the script, how we were making the movie, both for the sound, the production audio, everything you would diegetically hear in the movie, but then also he introduced us to our composer, fostered that relationship. So as we were making the film, they were aware of how we were putting it together, how the scenes were coming, um, you know, coming together through editing, and then in the end, there was a huge collaboration both between the musical side and then the general sound side as well. We like to say that we liked music that sounded like sound effects, and we liked some sound effects that sound a little bit musical. I think that the blending and blurring there can make things really interesting.
Can you talk more about the looks you want to give to the film or how it came to be?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I always liked the idea that the house itself would have a character and a feel, and that as soon as we get to this house, the characters never really leave, and it feels like they're almost in like a limbo. So just as you say, there's a lot of like blues and grays in the nights. And then in the daytime exteriors, because we were filming for so long, we had the opportunity to wait for weather conditions to be exactly what we were looking for, which is why it's very frequently like foggy out in the day. We were fortunate that the house we were filming in was on this hillside where we frequently had the conditions to get fog. So we were, trying to always film outside when it was foggy, so it would feel like you were in this limbo, kind of in between worlds. Which very much relates to the story the human character is going through. He's returned to this old ancestral home. That I should say also is kind of inspired by Edgar Allan Poe, is a inspiration for me for sure. The Fall of the House of Usher even appears on the TV within the movie at one point. So there's kind of that limbo, moody, gloomy vibe is certainly what we were going for.
A lot of people think that animals may have something senses that we don't.
I certainly think, along with the idea that the origin of the story certainly was, what if you told a haunted house story from a dog's perspective? But I think all horror movies work best when there's something relatable, something recognizable that the audience can think, oh, I've seen something like that. And usually that makes things scarier. And I feel like everyone who's owned a dog at some point has wondered, why is my dog barking at the empty corner? Or why is it staring at nothing? And I think, I don't think I personally believe that there's something supernatural, that they're seeing ghosts, but the thought has certainly crossed my minds on like dark nights when I'm alone with me and my dog. So I think that's definitely a power of, what I hope the story is like, a resonance that people feel to it. We tried to also, in terms of the animal perspective, not that I think dogs can, necessarily see the supernatural, but their senses are superpowers when compared to ours. Their hearing and sense of smell is, so much, it's beyond our ability, our capacity for understanding. So there's a lot of scenes in the film where Indy is genuinely following his nose, or he's hearing things that may or may not be real, but very clearly he can hear them and his human companion can't. And again, it's not necessarily real that dogs can see ghosts, but they can definitely see and hear and perceive things that we can't. So I think that was definitely on our minds for how we would set up scenes, what would motivate Indy as a character, and things like that.
Yeah, because I was also thinking, it doesn't make sense. It's not doable to shoot and have him in this sound design already, but it might also have him stressed out. Is what I was thinking of. Do you think it was hard for him working on this film?
So we like to say so my wife who produced the film with me, we only ever trained Indy to be our friend. He has not had very much advanced training. And every part of the filmmaking process was very much built around him and his schedule. It's why we filmed for such a long duration. So we were only filming, in some cases, 1 or 2 shots a day. His attention span is only a few hours. He's like a little kid, which is why they say don't work with kids or animals. after an hour or two, it's pretty hard to get him to focus on anything. So that means the day is done. So this was kind of like our hobby we did as a family over a really long period of time. And certainly, his he's a member of our family, and we love him, and I feel like he loves us. So that's part of the reason that we act in the film with him as bodies, not as stand-ins, I should say. Um, so that's why I think you see some of the performances out of him that you see. But I would say most of the time, if you're ever wondering how did they get Indy to do XY thing, how did they get him to look this way, the answer is very frequently I'm holding a piece of food just off camera, and as soon as the shot ends, he probably runs forward to eat a piece of food, which is his favorite thing in the world. So I'm very certain he was happy.
Very well. Did he see the film?
Has he seen the film? Yes, he's seen and heard it very frequently. So the sounds he makes in the film, his do come from Indy. They're layered in after the fact. We had separate sound recording sessions with Indy, usually where we're playing fetch with a tennis ball, to get all those sounds of like the grunts, the wheezes, the barks and whatnot. And I think he reacts to the movie most intensely when he hears himself. I feel like that's a pretty common thing a lot of dog owners experience, is that like you'll be in your house and then a dog on TV will bark and suddenly your dog is all upset or very interested in what's going on. So yes, he's been privy to the movie, put it that way.
How big was your team?
Yeah, I love physical production. I'm very glad we're not making the movie right now. I'm very glad it's done and it's over. It was a very long odyssey to get done, but it was an absolute joy. I loved every day we were making it. I mean, it's probably not surprising that I genuinely love dogs. I have my own dog. He starred in my movie. I got to play with my dog, professionally for, years. And turn this into a project. And very much credit to my wife, who again produced the film with me, who believed that this whole thing was going to work and participated in all of this. Um, this was her first. So I have a background in film. This is my first feature. This is her first feature as well. Although she's a scientist. So she's coming to it from a very different perspective. So maybe it's good she didn't know how movies were supposed to be made.
And what did you say before? It's where you live. The house is your house.
It's a house we rented it for 3 years in order to film and live there. But it's a very cool location. It might not look it. It looks like it is a house in the woods in the mountains somewhere, but it's actually just a short drive outside of New York City. It's in the midst of an old Revolutionary War battlefield, so it seems like the house could actually be haunted, but we experienced nothing. In reality, the house is very, very charming. If you were to film there in broad daylight, not on an overcast, rainy, or foggy day, it's an absolutely like stunning location. We just chose to make it look scary.
How did you prepare it a lot, or how much did you change it?
Yeah, we like to say the house really was fighting us. The house really wants to be a cute like cottage in the woods. We did a fair amount of set dressing to give it that look. In some cases, it was as simple as painting the walls, just because white walls and night exteriors don't play nice all the time. A lot of it was also filling the house with just older things. That in the story, the main character has gone to his grandfather. It's his grandfather's house, and it's been sitting empty since he died. So I fortunately have a lot of family in the area. Basically went around to everyone's, what's in my aunt's attic, what's in my parents' basement, what can we just pull in that no one's using that has exactly that right look, that would give it the feel of, it feels hopefully real and relatable. All those props are genuine. They're not real to the location or the story, but it is the kind of thing for at least a certain age of people. It feels like, oh, I've seen places like that, or my grandparents had a place like that, or furniture that looks like that. So hopefully it feels real and relatable.
I think there are quite a lot of movies where with dogs, of course, with dogs as sidekicks or with dogs in supporting roles, but also in main roles. Some. Where do you have any favorites? Which favorites?
Yeah, great question. I have watched a lot of those movies in preparation for this. It might sound like a silly answer, but I really think Air Bud is very good. That dog is, it's a very different kind of dog movie. The dog is not, he's not a realistic canine protagonist. He can play basketball, and the story is, it's a children's movie, so it's a kind of a very different kind of story, obviously. But I think Air Bud really is good, as some really good dog acting in there. Um, Certainly the dog from Anatomy of a Fall. I mean, I was making Good Boy while that film came out, so Messi is definitely a very high caliber dog actor. That I'd love to say Indy was looking up to Messi, but I don't think he knows what that movie is.